You're standing on a splinter-slick dock at twilight, boots already sticky with tar and spilled lamp oil, listening to the tide slap the pilings like a wet heartbeat. 3 gulls circle overhead in lazy spirals, except they're not looking for fish tonight, they're waiting for corpses. Because out there in the pewter haze, an inbound galley is angling past the breakwater, rowing benches creaking in mournful unison, its single lantern shivering behind stained canvas. No banners, no hull markings, no cheerful hail from the quarterdeck. Just the telltale silence of a ship that should have anchored well offshore, but, for reasons only desperation explains, is ghosting straight toward the city's mouth. The harbor master beside you, fat purse on his hip, quill behind one ear, shifts uneasily. He's memorized the new quarantine ordinances posted by the guild just last month. 40 days in the outer roadstead, cargo fumigated with vinegar fumes, crew inspected for buboes the size of walnuts. But ordinances can be bent by bribes, and plague draped in profit is still profit. The cargo's wool, he mutters, trying to convince himself. Wool doesn't cough. You know better. Wool is packed in flea-thick bales, and fleas ride plague the way a minstrel rides rumors, fast, light, everywhere at once. While we wait for that first mooring line to hiss over the capstan, hit that like button if atmospheric doom and medieval mayhem are your lullaby of choice. It tells the algorithm you're into doom scrolling the 14th century with me. And drop a comment. What's the strangest port superstition you've ever heard? No judgment if it involves salt over shoulders or goat blood on keels. I just want to know who's sailing with us tonight. All set? Good. Take a breath. Smell that? Rotten citrus and bilge water. We've barely begun. No captain ever plots a course for pestilence, yet plague ships followed medieval trade routes the way ivy follows cracked masonry. Inevitable, patient, lethal. The logic is simple. Where coin flows, bodies follow. Where bodies pile, rats feast. Where rats feast, fleas commute between fur and flesh, sipping infection like dark wine. Now imagine cramming that whole ecosystem, merchant, dockhand, rat, and flea, into the damp wooden lung of a single vessel, and giving it 50 days of brine-soaked incubation. Congratulations, you've built a floating city of micro-funerals. Picture the hold first. It's midnight black and smells of cumin, urine, and sheep grease. Sacks slump in sodden rows, each one a burlap hotel for Ratus. The crew above knows the rats are there. They thump across ceiling planks in nightly races. But sailors treat rats like omens, not foes. Kill one and foul luck dogs the voyage. Feed one and maybe it spares your bread bag. So the rodents stay, gnawing ropes to floss their teeth, copulating at a rate that would scandalize brothel keepers, shedding flea larvae into every crevice. Meanwhile, the fleas practice gymnastics. One can leap 32 times its body length, which in shipboard terms means traveling from rat hide to bare ankle in less than a second. It bites, spits a droplet of Yersinia pestis into the bloodstream, and hops away unfazed, leaving a time bomb behind. Move topside. Deck boards groan under barrels of brackish water and pickled eel. Sailors coil lines with blistered hands, each blister a microscopic doorway for infection. The cook stirs barley gruel in a cauldron that was last scoured near Alexandria, back when the first mate still had all his teeth. Galley fires warm the bellies of hungry fleas who've crawled up trouser legs for a midnight feed. In the forecastle, the youngest deckboy dreams of shore leave and cheap wine, unaware that 2 tender lumps have blossomed under his arms while he sleeps. By dawn, he'll be coughing red foam, and the surgeon, really just an oaf with a curved knife and strong stomach, will recommend prayer, bleeding, or both.
Every port city swore it would never let such a ship dock. Venice invented the quarantine in 1348, 40 days anchored at Lazaretto Vecchio while officials watched for death rattle fireworks. But merchants complained. Pepper spoiled, letters of credit lapsed, investors threatened to pull coin. So the rules flexed. 30 days, 20, 10 if the cargo was silk and the bribe felt generous. A single mistake, and plague sluiced ashore like lamp oil on water, fast, thin, uncontainable. Imagine you're the night watch at Aigues-Mortes, 1361. A galley arrives under cover of fog, claiming storm damage, begging a priest for last rites. Harbor guards, moved by piety, escort 2 friars aboard. Within a week, those friars are buried in pits beyond the walls, and the city's midwives have more corpses than christenings. Or picture Bristol, 1349. 3 Genoese carracks slip past the quarantine chain by hoisting flags of Normandy. They unload oranges, then unload plague. A month later, orange peels litter empty streets, while gravediggers sharpen shovels in shifts. Pause a second. If you're still awake, and if this creeping dread is your cup of mead, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next nightmare port of call. It keeps the channel afloat better than any bilge pump. And ring the bell, because plague never arrives on schedule. Now let's climb down the rope ladder into the boat tier, that claustrophobic slice between lower deck and cargo hold where 6 sailors are stashed like bruised fruit. It's barely 3 feet high, the air soupy with sweat and exhaled prayers. Here lies Marcos, a navigator who once boasted he could chart a safe passage between any 2 stars. Today, he charts the purple stains creeping up his thigh. Next to him is Ioveta, disguised as Jonas because shipping firms don't hire women. Her secret was safer than her health. She fingers a charm of Saint Roch against her fever, but the saint, patron of plague victims, seems busy elsewhere. Each cough she hears becomes an hourglass tipping, another grain closer to the moment the boatswain orders bodies overboard. The disposal ritual is brisk. Stitch the corpse in sailcloth, weight it with spare anchor chain, slide it off a greased plank into moonlit waves. Splash, ripple, done. But the ocean is not a grave, merely a courier. Currents comb those cadavers toward shorelines where fisher children poke them with sticks, wondering why the sailor looks so bloated and blue. By the time local bailiffs organize a cleanup, fleas have already hopped onto curious dogs and beachcombing cats. The plague dislikes borders even more than smugglers do. Speaking of smugglers, let's visit the supercargo's cabin. He's the shadowy accountant who knows which crates hide frankincense and which hide contraband silver. His ledger bristles with forged seals of health, each one purchased at the last port for a pouch of florins. Officially, the ship carries fine wool, 6 pilgrims, and blessed relics. Unofficially, it also carries a bishop's ransom in Persian dye, 2 barrels of stolen coin, and a disease that will bankrupt 4 kingdoms. The supercargo isn't evil, he's simply fluent in incentives. If plague fears meant grounded fleets, no merchant would risk a voyage. So he shrinks his conscience to fit his purse and hopes the next port's inspector prefers gold to caution.
Every sailor tells ghost stories to pass the night watch, and plague ships manufactured the grimmest tales. Stories of the black captain whose flesh sloughed off in the rigging while his crew rode on unaware. Of the lantern seen drifting along the gunwale of tears. If it passes your porthole, someone inside will be dead by morning. Of the bell that rings itself when the doctor's last remedy fails. Rose water mixed with crushed emerald, painted on swollen glands to fool death with glitter. Death, alas, is colorblind.
Lest you think only sailors suffered, picture the port physicians. They wear waxed cloth gowns and vinegar-soaked masks shaped like monstrous beaks. Their job? Board the vessel, prod groins for boils, and certify either fit for trade or fit for fire. But plague ships often dock at night, and physicians prefer daylight fees. So inspection falls to low-ranking sergeants armed with torches and stale wine for courage. One hesitates, another cracks a joke, the torch dips, and the rope ladder is tied off. Inspection becomes handshake. Handshake becomes docking papers. Docking papers become plague burrowing into city alleys like a silent army. Quick reminder. If morbid maritime minutia is helping you drift into a history-induced slumber, tap that like icon. It tells me to hoist more sails in this direction. And share which port city you'd have trusted least in 1348. For me, it's always that one peeling statue of Saint Sebastian staring over Genoa's harbor, arrow-riddled, unblinking, as if he knew what cargo arrived. Back on the pier, the galley's bow finally kisses the fender logs. Mooring lines groan taut, and the gangplank thuds into place. The first figure to emerge is the purser, cheeks sunken, one eye swollen shut. He carries a pouch of letters sealed in red wax, the color of either royal authority or warning, depending how you tilt it. A dock clerk reaches to take them, but the harbor master hesitates. Rumor says plague can leap from parchment to skin. Untrue, but fear seldom checks footnotes. A compromise. The letters will be placed in a vinegar bath, then baked over coals, then copied by a scribe who works behind a screen. Information, like disease, must be sanitized before circulation. Behind the purser lumbers a stevedore bearing a sample bale of wool, proof the cargo's intact. Yet the bale moves, twitching with unseen rats startled by lantern light. One rat darts out, scampers across the gangplank, disappears into a crack between cobbles. It is the match that finds the haystack. Fleas unload by the hundreds, vanishing into shadows where cats can't reach. Each one primed with plague for its next warm host. Child, beggar, noble's laphound, it matters not. Disease is delightfully egalitarian at first. Hierarchy returns only when counting the dead. Do you feel the chill yet? Not from night air, but from knowing the city's festival tomorrow, complete with market, joust, and puppet show, will gather half the populace into one square. Fleas love crowds the way poets love taverns. A single bite can write a stanza of agony across a whole family. And by the time the city council decrees a quarantine, the rats will have shuttled plague into every pantry, priest hole, and granary. Like a malign wind, it's already everywhere at once. Let's close this watch with the tiniest villain on board, Yersinia pestis itself. Under the ship's creaking beams, the bacterium thrives inside the flea's gut, until it multiplies so thickly it clogs the insect's feeding tube. Starving, the flea bites harder, regurgitating a slurry of plague into the wound to make room. It is biology's version of a broken tap spewing poison. Within 2 days, lymph nodes swell. By 4, fever roasts the mind. By 6, either death or maimed survival. The scariest truth? Plague doesn't kill ships. Ships survive to carry it farther. Shrouds are changed, names painted new, captains replaced, but the hull remembers, soaking infection into its seams. Unless burned outright in a cleansing fire, a rare, expensive remedy, any vessel can become a plague ship again. And merchants seldom burn profit. They scrape timbers, repaint figureheads, and sail at dawn. Follow the girl. Her name is Mariette, up the slope into the draper's quarter. Her father sells ribbons, and ribbons need dye, and dye workers need water, and water comes from the same canal where yesterday's chamber pots were dumped. The girl's arms ache under baskets, but she's happy because tonight is the midsummer fair. Jugglers, miracle plays, maybe a secret kiss behind the shrine of St. Crispin. She twirls once in the street, basket spinning, hair catching the sun. No one notices the dark ring blooming beneath her ear, tender as overripe fruit. Inside the dye shop, vats simmer in mad colors. Arsenic green, alum purple, madder red. Steam condenses on rafters, drips back down in mineral rain. It is a paradise for fleas, warm, damp, permanently busy. They leap from Mariette's hem onto wool scraps, hitching rides deeper into the warren, where apprentices strip to sweaty linens and stomp fabric bare-legged like vintners pressing grapes. One by one, ankles bloom with bites. One by one, coughs hatch. A journeyman named Blaze mops his brow, smearing dye across a fever shine he blames on the heat. He spits crimson phlegm into a gutter that feeds the street drain. From there, the plague has 2 choices: travel by rat highway or by human foot. It chooses both. Stop a minute. Hear that? Church bells. Not the usual lazy toll for prime. This is the quick, shrill clamor that means city council is meeting. Word of suspicious swellings reached the aldermen after dawn, and now the brass-buttoned militia hustles through squares posting fresh edicts. All houses with illness must display a black cross. Food and water will be brought on poles. Disobey and face the whip. Good policy on parchment, chaos in practice. Nobody wants to mark their door and lose customers, suitors, gossip, life. So they bargain with God instead. Burn juniper, hang posies, mutter psalms, hope. Speaking of hope, if you're clinging to hope the way Blaze clings to the edge of his dye vat, subscribe right now so you don't miss the next candlelit confession of this city's unraveling. Ring that bell. Plague loves surprise visits. Across town, the Physicians' Guild convenes behind shuttered windows. 20 men in long black gowns waxed from shoulder to hem so infection beads and rolls off like rain. Their masks are monstrous bird beaks packed with rosemary, cloves, and smoked orange peel. The idea, good smells block bad air, and bad air is plague. They debate treatments, lancing buboes to drain corrupted humors, prescribing ground emerald in vinegar, bleeding from the ankle to draw sickness downward. One young master suggests isolation wards, but an elder reminds him isolation means fewer paying patients. The motion dies faster than Blaze's apprentices. Doctors require proof of expertise, so they dissect the corpse of a beggar collected at dawn. They find his spleen blackened, his lungs mottled like ripe cheese. Nothing new. They tell the magistrate the disease arrives by celestial alignment, Mars in opposition to Saturn, so the solution is prayer, penitence, and perhaps a donation to the cathedral roof fund. The magistrate nods, pockets the diagnosis, and orders extra incense for Sunday Mass. Let's check on that incense. In the cathedral nave, choristers rehearse the requiem they'll soon sing on loop. Their voices soar under ribbed vaults, carrying flecks of spittle into perfumed air thick with myrrh smoke. A flea, clinging to the hem of a thurible boy's alb, tastes sanctity and venom in equal measure. It nibbles, infects, hops to a deacon's sleeve, then to the velvet glove of the bishop himself as he blesses choir boys with benevolent pats. You can almost hear Yersinia pestis chuckle at the architecture of it all, a disease using holiness as its Trojan horse. Quick breath. How's your pulse? If it's racing, type "still breathing" below so I know you haven't succumbed mid-video. Engagement metrics matter even during an epidemic. Night again. Torches bleed resin tears, and the harbor reeks of pitch, as city guards haul the plague galley into a roped-off berth called the leper dock. Too little, too late. The crew is half dead, the other half delirious. Officials read the articles of contagion aloud. No shore leave, no trade. But rats can't read and fleas can't hear, so the exodus continues. Dock cats stalk the lines for stowaways, catch a few, miss many. Somewhere beneath a fish crate, a rat births a litter. Each pink pup opens blind eyes to a new world of opportunity. Meanwhile, markets adapt. Vendors selling amulets of dried toads report record profits. Street preachers pour vinegar down gutters, crying that the stench will frighten demons. Housewives boil nettles with wormwood to wash bedding. Servants steal the mixture to peddle door to door as certifiable pestilence purge, approved by 2 bishops. The line between medicine and hustle blurs faster than ink in rain. And yet, life insists on itself. Lovers still meet under the olives. Drunks still dice in taverns. Gossip still buzzes louder than flies. Because until plague touches your doorstep, it's just another rumor, like sea dragons or honest tax collectors. Tonight, 6 burghers attend a masked ball in silk imported from, ironically, the very port where the death ship last loaded. They dance, they flirt, they kiss gloved hands. One glove carries a flea. One kiss transfers plague straight down a lady's throat. By morning, she'll blame her sore lymph nodes on too much burgundy.
By dusk, she'll have coughed blood on every cushion in her salon. If that image sticks with you, reward the channel with a share. Spread word faster than fleas. Irony intended.
Zoom in on the city graveyard 3 days later. Gravediggers work by moonlight now. Daylight isn't long enough. They dig trenches, not graves, because names lose meaning when corpses number in hundreds. A priest walks the row, muttering the absolution at speed, stumbling when his incense burner snags on exposed ribs. He crosses himself, but not even God can keep up with the turnover. Unburied bodies swell and burst. Dogs scavenge. Crows square dance along fence rails. The smell becomes a city-wide compass. Whichever way you turn, it points to death.
Panic births scapegoats. A rumor catches that Jewish spice merchants poisoned wells. Nothing to do with rats, too mundane. Mobs storm the ghetto, torches hopping like fireflies. But plague doesn't discriminate. Rioters cough mid-riot, drop mid-torch wave, and the fire fizzles. Later, magistrates tack a notice. The sickness is punishment for sin. Therefore, citizens must parade barefoot while flogging their backs. Blood drips onto cobbles already slick with other fluids, and fleas applaud the feast. Shout out break! If you've lasted this far, comment "Flagellant Fitness Program" below. Dark humor keeps us breathing, right? While mobs bleed in the streets, the supercargo from the plague ship sits in a rented garret counting coins. He sold the last of his contraband dye to a weaver who died before payment cleared, but the supercargo had demanded coin up front, prudent if immoral. He plans to leave at dawn for the next town, taking plague along in the folds of his cloak. He doesn't know the purple blot on his calf isn't dye. When he dies on the road, bandits will strip him, steal his purse, and carry infection into the hills. That's how pandemics turn kingdoms into chessboards. Every pawn is a courier. The harbor master we met on the dock, the one who hoped wool couldn't cough, now lies sweating under quartz-flecked blankets. His wife dabs his lips with rosewater, counting prayers like beads. He begs her to burn the Black Cross notice before the neighbors see. She does, and, simultaneously, unseen fleas flee his sheets, seeking fresh hosts in the courtyard where children chase hoops. Upslope in the dye shop, Blaze is past prayer. His apprentices, the surviving two, lower him into a vat of half-cooled indigo because there's no room in the graveyard and firewood is scarce. They tell themselves the dye's lye content will purify him. It doesn't. 2 days later, merchants discover the blue cloth takes on eerie dark splotches as his body decomposes below. They declare the color cursed, and prices drop. Economic contagion, too, is airborne. Pause. Drink water. Check your lymph nodes. If they feel fine, you're either lucky or lying. Hit the like anyway. It's the only inoculation I can guarantee. Council finally orders the city gates shut. Too late, of course. Plague built its empire before bureaucracy saddled its horse. But soldiers hammer beams across archways, post sentinel tents, and invent new forms of bribery on the spot. The wealthy escape in litters disguised as corpse wagons. The poor scale walls at night and vanish into the countryside, scattering plague like dandelion fluff. Nearby hamlets bar doors, burn bridges, blame travelers.
Highways litter with bodies nobody dares bury, lest they inherit the ghost. Inside the walls, silence grows. Forge fires go out. No one cares for armor when the unseen enemy uses fleas. Bakeries shutter. You can't taste bread through buboes. Alehouses remain open longest. Thirst outlives caution. But eventually tankards clang lonely on empty boards. Rats parade across bar tops unchallenged. They won't reign long. Starvation follows plague as night follows dusk. But for a week, they are kings. Let's end this vigil on the roof of the cathedral, where the bell ringer tugs the hemp rope with blistered palms. He rings once for each soul departing this hour. His arms ache like crucifixion. He rings for Mariette, who never made the fair, for Blaise, dissolved in dye, for the bishop, dead behind incense fog, for the harbor rat, slipping into legend. The bell's voice drifts over a city dim as a snuffed candle, warning no one alive, comforting no one dead. Yet it rings, because habit survives hope. Below, in the nave, candles gutter. A lone monk copies names into the book of remembrance until ink freezes on the quill, either from cold stone or his own cramping fingers. He stares at the blank remainder of the parchment, imagines it stretching to infinity, room enough for every citizen yet to fall. Then he dips the pen again. History, like plague, is relentless. The moon has leaked away, and the sky this morning is the color of hammered pewter, hard, dented, unwilling to warm anything it touches. You're trudging up the ridgeway behind the plague cart, eyes stinging from wood ash drifting off the wheels. Every jolt sends another tumble of limbs knocking against the sideboards, wrists jangling like cheap tin together, ankles knocking a hollow clack-clack so rhythmic it almost counts as a dirge. Their owners were still breathing at sundown. Dawn turned them into freight. The carter spits to wet his whistle, raises his voice over the creak of axles. 2 more loads before sext, he tells no one in particular, and flicks his reins. The horse lurches forward, ribs showing through hide like the hull ribs of an abandoned ship. Flies follow in a shimmering cloud. They never bother with the living, while the dead offer sweeter meat. You keep pace, because the monks won't dig alone, and they pay in loaves and thin ale, currency enough when coin has started to smell like contagion. If you're grim marching with me through corpse dawn, tap the like so the algorithm knows you value historical nightmares served raw. And do me a favor in the comments. Share the worst job you can imagine in a plague-shattered city. Rat catcher, bell ringer, corpse counter? I'll read every shudder. The trench sits in a wind-scoured meadow just beyond the north gate, 50 paces long, 6 paces deep, and already half bought by death. Monks in mud-caked habits kneel along the lip, chanting the same Latin phrase until words blur into breath. In manus tuas, Domine. Their voices are hoarse. Someone replaced the syllables of mercy with grit overnight. Bodies slide off the cart in sloppy thuds. Sailors first, rigging scars on palms, tar trapped under their nails. Then 3 dye workers, blue as bruises. And finally the harbor master, still wearing his seal ring. No time to pry it free, no one willing to touch infected flesh for trinkets. The cart empties, and you help shovel lime powder over the heap. Lime bites your nostrils like winter pepper, but it can't bite plague. It only whitens the bones faster. When the trench is 3/4 full, the monks sprinkle holy water with sprigs of rosemary, the stems so brittle they snap like dry quills. Water hisses on lime, rising in faint steam. For a heartbeat, you imagine the dead exhaling. Then the overseer snaps you back. Cover! Earth thumps, shovels scrape, prayer fades beneath the first layer of soil. Another row will top them by nightfall. Before you leave, a monk presses a wafer of bread into your hand. Payment. It tastes of wood smoke and fear, but you devour it anyway. Hunger doesn't negotiate with squeamishness. Pause here, friend. If you can stomach more, hit subscribe so we can drag the next cart together. The bell icon? Consider it your personal tolling for the dead. Silent on the outside, deafening inside your skull. Back within the walls, life has rearranged itself around absence. Streets echo like hollow pipes. No hawkers, no lute players, just the occasional slamming door as another household nails shut its fate. Merchants once lined the cloth market in gaudy rows. Today, faded awnings flap like surrender flags. Empty stalls make a wind chime out of unused scales and dangling chains. And yet, in the alley behind St. Wulfran's, commerce mutates. A woman with a violet shawl holds her hands beneath her cloak, murmuring, "Charm of silver fennel drives pestilence from lung to toe, one groat." Her charms are pebbles dipped in pitch and rolled in ash. Worthless, but fear is loose currency. Customers queue anyway, eyes darting, coins sweaty. Round the corner, a gambler named Rule pushes dice carved from sheep knuckles. He's painted tiny crosses on the sixes to prove the bones are purified. Losers call him a devil, winners tip him in moldy bread, but everyone laughs harder than yesterday. Laughter, like ale, dulls edges. For a moment. Watch how each roar ends in a cough. Press deeper. At the guild hall door, clerks push parchment writs beneath a barricade of overturned tables. Taxes suspended, rents postponed, debts forgiven till God's wrath abates. Illusionary mercy. Tomorrow's hunger will double every coin owed. But the ink dries fast, and the scribe's quill scratches on, unbothered by looming arithmetic. Remember Mariette? Her father's ribbon shop stands shuttered, its window a dusty quilt of sun-bleached samples. Inside, she lies on a straw pallet. Her mother dampens cloths in wine, the last antiseptic they own, and drapes them over buboes that pulse like overripe figs. Mariette's breath rattles, yet her eyes stay bright, darting between ceiling shadows as if watching invisible sparrows. In delirium, she whispers, "The fair! Did we miss the fair?" Her mother lies, "Not yet, my dove." 2 rooms away, the younger brother picks lice from his tunic, humming the fair's ditty under his breath. The tune stalls every time his sister groans. Silence fills the rest. If you've ever lied tenderly to spare someone pain, drop a candle emoji below. Let the comments glimmer like vigil lights in this darkness. 3 nights later, the city hears drums. slow, deliberate, echoing through deserted lanes. A procession approaches from the west gate. 50 men, stripped to the waist, backs lashed raw, singing palms through broken teeth. Flagellants. They believe scourging flesh extracts sin, and purging sin starves plague. Torches cast long shadows that whip the walls like echoes of their chords. Spectators kneel, sob, beg to join. The leader, shaven crown, eyes fever bright, raises a hand. Sins must be confessed aloud, he intones. Confessions pour like thick wine. Thefts, adulteries, secret doubtings. The street becomes a river of guilt, and the flagellants wade through, splashing absolution with each strike. Fleas hitch rides on their blood-slicked backs, delighted by fresh channels. Council watches from an upper window. Some aldermen argue the flagellants inspire devotion. Others fear unrest. A compromise. Let them pass, but bar them from the cathedral. Bars mean nothing when doors hang on splintered hinges. By dawn, the penitents pray at the high altar, dripping crimson onto marble. The bishop would object if his lungs weren't drowning in fluid. Outside, a new rumor buds. Bathing opens pores for plague, therefore water is death. Wells stand untouched, buckets gather dust. People turn to wine, vinegar, beer, anything fermented enough to feel resilient. Taverns oblige, watering nothing, overcharging everything. Somewhere in this haze, an enterprising brewer markets plague-proof porter, boiled longer, blessed twice. Barrels sell out before the first mug is drawn. Drinkers cheer, clink tankards, swap stories of entire villages immune thanks to strong ale. Immunity will last until the first drunk dies mid-hiccup. Signal boost, friends! If plague-proof porter sounds like your nightcap, smash that like. It helps the channel outrun every algorithmic quarantine. Farther uptown, noble manses sprout red X's on their doors, quiet admissions that privilege leaks. Servants toss linens from windows, hoping fresh air spares them. The linens drift down like surrender flags and land in gutters where beggars snatch them for makeshift cloaks. Each cloth still warm with fever. Charity, involuntary, lethal. A particular manor, arched gate, crest of a lion devouring a son, houses the city treasurer. He locked himself in the solar when his steward fell ill, convinced silver plates could reflect contagion. Now he sits in candlelight, counting ingots, stacking them between himself and the door like a bulwark. Outside, his children knock, asking for bread. He pretends the knocking is distant thunder. In truth, thunder would be kinder. It kills quickly and doesn't send letters demanding taxes after. The plague ship, abandoned at the leopard dock, groans as tide shifts. Rats depart in steady streams, their job finished. A few sailors remain alive, quarantined behind a rope line, patrolled by conscripted lads wielding spears longer than courage. The sailors beg water. The lads toss crusts, afraid to approach. One sailor, delirious, leaps the rail and sprints along the pier, shouting warnings about a black-winged angel perched on the main mast. An arrow from the watchtower stops him. His body lies where it falls. Nobody moves to drag it clear. Before sunset, Fleas desert him for the warmth of the arrow's fletching. By sunrise, the archer wheezes behind the parapet. Drop a comment. Would you have loosed that arrow or risked hauling him back? Ethics get slippery when survival oils the floor. Weeks turn. Grave trenches multiply like cracks in ice. Lime supplies dwindle. Pyres consume the last reserves of pitch. Smoke hangs over rooftops, a gray lid on a pot about to boil over. Cats vanish, either eaten or wise. Dog barks echo lonely without response. Bells toll less frequently. The bell ringer's arms failed, then his heart. Now the clapper swings on wind alone, striking mournful at random. A city cough translated into bronze. And yet, seedlings of order sprout in the rubble. A midwife organizes orphaned children into a ragged troop. They forage gardens for turnips, exchange them with monks for porridge. A retired soldier nails planks over sewer grates to slow rat swarms. Futile, but gesture matters. A scribe starts recording the names of the dead on the cathedral wall, chalk letters tall as geese. When chalk runs out, he switches to charcoal. When charcoal runs out, he uses blood, pricked from his own fingertip each night. You, meanwhile, sit beneath the wall, watching lists lengthen. The scribe asks your name. You hesitate, then point at an empty space 2 lines down. Save it, you say. I'm not finished being alive. He nods. The world is made of postponed epitaphs now. If your own name has ever felt suddenly fragile, type it below, just the first letter. Let our letters stand together like frightened soldiers on a wall too long. Toward the river, wagons creak with goods headed nowhere. The bridge is chained, guarded by militia in patchwork armor. Each traveler must produce a token of health, unblemished skin shown at wrist and neck, or a certificate stamped by the Physicians Guild. Counterfeiters thrive. For 3 pennies, they'll ink any seal. The militia captain knows, but bribes keep bread on his table. He pockets coin, waves wagons through, wheels rattling with grain, cloth, concealed corpses. When the next town falls, they'll blame fate. Fate, bribery, 2 masks on 1 skull. Night again. Final candle stub guttering. You lie on pallet in a loft above the cooper's shop, listening to barrels swell as summer heat seeps in. Sweat trickles, and every prickle becomes dread. Flea? Fever? Just heat, for now. Through a cracked shutter, you see the moon dimmed behind smoke, swollen like a bandaged eye. Somewhere, a mother sings a lullaby to a child who won't survive till dawn. Yet the melody is soft, steady, tender. Plague hasn't silenced every song. Some throats insist on music precisely because silence paves the streets. Wrap your cloak tighter. If these whispered lullabies keep your own eyes heavy, press subscribe so you'll be here when dawn peels back the next layer of calamity. And hit the bell. I'll ring it when the flagellants turn from prayer to riot, when the midwife's orphans stage a bread heist, when the plague ship finally burns in the harbor's black mirror. Your vision tunnels through the eyeglass slits, and again that leather beak clamps over your mouth like a wary bird refusing to let you speak. The inside stinks of yesterday's concoction, balsam soaked in vinegar, crushed angelica root, one whole clove you chewed for courage but never spat out. Overnight, the mixture turned sour, mingling with the musk of your own breath until it resembles wet hay left to sour in a stall. Each inhale drags the odor deeper, a reminder that survival comes flavored with rot. Down in the courtyard, charcoal fires hiss where apprentices heat irons the length of knitting needles. You hear them argue over whether iron must glow red or merely dull orange to cauterize a bubo. No one agrees, yet all swing the brands as though mastery were a question of wrist angles, not luck. The smith who forged these tools keeps a tally on his sleeve, one chalk stroke for every patient who lived beyond sunrise. The marks form a hesitant ladder that climbs 2 steps, drops 1, climbs again. Progress in plague time. Your boots crunch frost as you cross to the apothecary's lean-to. Inside, shelves bow under jars of marigold petals, nutmeg, frankincense, and something darker labeled Corpus Gallinae ex humo, ground wishbone from a sacrificial hen. A boy no older than 12 turns petals with a spoon, eyes wide from sleepless nights. You hand him a scrap of parchment, 10 measures pepper, 4 measures mint, 1 measure opium if you can still find it. He nods, essays a smile that breaks halfway, and sluices vinegar over herbs already swimming. When the smell reaches you, sharp, metallic, almost hopeful, you unbuckle the beak, wedge fresh stuffing inside, and fasten the straps until the world becomes tunneled again. If the image of a medieval pharmacist brewing despair like soup twists something in your gut, tap the like button so I know you're still walking beside me. And in the comments, confess, which modern scent would you choose to overpower death? Coffee? Gasoline? Pastries just out of the oven? I'm curious which comfort you'd bottle for your own beaked voyage. The first house on today's route leans against its neighbor as if both are too tired to stand alone. A rag about the latch means sickness inside. You raise a gloved fist, knock once. No answer. Second knock, heavier. Boards creak. A girl appears. 5? 6? Nose crusted, hair braided long ago and left to mat. Mother won't wake, she whispers. She thinks your mask is a crow come to steal bread. You crouch, voice muffled. Show me. She leads you through a corridor where rushes underfoot smell of urine and lavender water spilled weeks earlier. In the rear room, a woman lies stiff, mouth open like a question left unanswered. Bluish blotches rim her neck. Fleas skitter across her throat, searching warmth she can't supply. Procedure. Mirror to check for breath. Fog reveals none. Prayer your mentor taught, but you never believed. Then chalk on the doorpost. Deceased. Remove at dusk. The girl clutches your sleeve. You feel tug despite layers. She asks what will happen to her. Protocol says send her to the orphan ward by St. Gertrude's, but those beds are full of coughing children. Instead, you hand her the wooden token around your neck. Saint Sebastian pierced by arrows, patron of plague survivors. Keep this, you say. The saint has room in his quiver for you. It's a lie disguised as hope. Lies are lighter than corpses. Outside, you scratch another tally into waxed tablets. Patient count, 1 deceased, 0 living. A start. Mid-morning, market square. Once a choir of barter, now nearly silent. Stalls boarded except one, where a mountebank in crimson robe waves a vial the color of sunrise. Elixir of Arabian physicians, guaranteed to banish black swellings. He thrusts it toward a cluster of weary townsfolk. You know the liquid, diluted syrup of rhubarb. Might purge bowels, nothing more. Approach, brandish your staff shod in brass claws. Fraud invites rope, you warn. He scoffs until city guards drift closer, halberds ready. The mountebank's courage folds like cheap linen. He packs vials, flees down an alley. The crowd looks to you for remedy, but receives only the bleak honesty of your mask. Still, honesty draws no bread. You set up a station by the dried fountain, hang a sign, consultations, 1 loaf or equivalent. Patients arrive, a baker's wife with red rings on her thighs, an old cooper whose armpits weep black pus, and a brewer who insists his ale cures cough, yet coughs between words. You lance, drain, smear goose-fat salve mixed with onion, wrap with linen boiled 3 times. Each grateful face leaves you payment, 2 crusts, half a wheel of cheese, a pewter badge shaped like a scallop, souvenir from a pilgrimage abandoned by plague. You pocket these currencies of desperation. Noon bells fail. The tower striker collapsed earlier. Time becomes guesswork measured by shadow length. You trudge to the university quarter seeking learned counsel. The anatomy theater's door stands ajar. Inside, scholars in wax-spotted gowns argue over a cadaver. One maintains the disease travels by corrupted air alone. Another insists putrid humors flow from spleen to heart. They dissect a corpse bloated blue, poking organs with quills like curious children. You intervene. Examine the bites along the thigh, vectors, not vapors. They glance at your mask, ripple with laughter, muffled by silk scarves, scented with ambergris. Academics prefer theory that smells expensive. You could stay, debate, waste breath. Instead, you ask the steward for quicklime. They hoard sacks for anatomy experiments, and he begrudgingly grants 2. Knowledge withheld never saved a city. Lime might. Outside, you shoulder the extra weight. Straps dig into armpits already raw. Still lighter than guilt if you left empty-handed. Scroll down. Smash subscribe if you think practical action beats scholarly pride. Algorithms, like epidemics, reward momentum. Toward evening, you join the corpse wagon procession. Torches flare, sparking cinders that drift like cursed snow. The driver sings under his breath, half prayer, half tavern tune. Anything to drown the wet thuds of bodies crossing rail slats. You walk behind, swinging a censer filled with juniper twigs. Fragrant smoke cloaks stench, but not sorrow. At the trench, you sprinkle lime onto the pile. Each hiss as powder meets flesh sounds like parchment sealing letters never sent. One body wears a makeshift mask carved from leather scrap, beak stubby, stuffed with wilted mint. Perhaps he believed imitation granted immunity. In death, the mask turned inward, beak flattened against cheek, releasing herbs that now perfume the grave. The scent drifts up, oddly sweet, and you imagine for a moment heaven might smell like plague masks done right. The night wind claws your cloak. You help shovel earth until shoulders quake, then step away to stretch. Stars above are icicles. They seem brittle enough to snap. Someone hands around cups of warmed wine spiced with cinnamon and ground rosemary. You raise the cup under your mask, tip it carefully. The liquid trickles past leather edges, down your chin, into beard you haven't dared shave. It tastes of wood smoke and old despair, yet soothes. Comment below. Would you linger to bury strangers or bolt for the hills? Be honest. The trenches forgive cowardice easier than tongues at the tavern. Late. You return to your rented loft. Removing the mask is a ritual. Unbuckle chin strap, ease leather away so herbs don't spill. Wipe inside with vinegar-soaked rag. Tonight, clumps of petals cling stubbornly, fused by your sweat. You pry them loose, and the combined odor, vinegar, herbs, your own sour breath, hits like a slap. Some days you welcome it, proof you're alive to smell anything. Today, it nauseates. You toss the stuffing into brazier flames. It crackles, releasing one final bloom of scent like incense at a corrupted altar. You soak fresh mix. Rose petals for sweetness, myrrh for sanctity, wormwood for wormwood's sake, bitterness to match reality. A final pinch of camphor jolts your sinuses awake. Before packing it into the beak, you press the blend to your nose. Inhale deeply. Memory floods. Childhood orchard after rain. Father smoking meat for winter. Mother's lavender soak. Strange how comfort and repulsion can share lungs. On the cot, you unfold a scrap of parchment, a list of households yet unvisited. 27 addresses. You write tomorrow's date at top. Wonder if parchment will outlive its writer. Candle sputters. You whisper half of the Lord's Prayer, half of a bawdy tavern chorus. Stitch them into lullaby. Sleep snatches you mid-syllable. If you've ever mixed sacred and profane just to stay sane, type both in chat. It'll be our secret handshake. Dream. Walls made of plague masks stretching to horizon, beaks pointing east like an army of anxious geese. Inside each, you see your own eyes staring back, swollen, rimmed red, accusing. The beaks open and close, croaking one word: breathe. You wake before dawn, heart sprinting, sweat chilling against spine. Outside, church bells ring at random. Someone pulls ropes without rhythm, desperate to announce hope or doom. You dress, shoulders aching, wrap scarf, don mask heavy with new herbs. The beak's scent is stronger than ever, almost pleasant, until it mingles with morning air thick with charnel smoke. Opposites wrestle inside nostrils, bloom versus rot. You accept the duel. It's the smell of duty. Stepping into street, you notice chalk writing on brick. Fear the rat, not the breath. Someone else has reached your conclusion. You smile behind leather, but also shiver. Signs of shared insight mean the plague has taught too many students. The iron latch thuds behind you, sealing off the alley where 20 empty plague masks hang from laundry lines like migratory birds that lost their way.
Some belong to colleagues who vanished between one house call and the next. Others you stripped from con men selling false cures door to door. The masks sway in a dawn draft that smells of soot and stale tallow, the scent weaving through their beaks so that every sway seems a sigh, exhausted leather admitting failure.
If you're still breathing under your own roof right now, slam that like button so I know you're awake on the other side of the screen. And tell me in the comments which sight unsettles you more. A single abandoned mask, or a whole flock of them waiting for faces that will never return? Today's summons comes from the bishop's palace. Marble, stained glass, long corridors that once echoed with choir practice, and now hush footfalls the way snow hushes hooves. You expected the spiritual shepherd to flee weeks ago, yet here you are, following a deacon who counts rosary beads out loud as if each click buys another heartbeat. He leads you to a guest chamber made into infirmary, tapestries hauled down to cover floorboards, braziers burning juniper, crystal cruets filled with eau de rose set beside crucifixes turned tarnished by constant handling. On the bed, an Italian moneylender wheezes through lips blue as lapis. He financed cathedral repairs last spring. The bishop owes him both roof and repentance. A physician stands over the body, trimming candle wicks, velvet doublet, no mask, cheeks powdered to hide fatigue. He refuses to make eye contact with you, muttering about improper dress, while he himself bleeds from a nick on his thumb. He has stuffed a spray of ambergris up each nostril. Expensive, useless. You crouch to inspect buboes at the lender's groin. The swellings shine like plums under stretched skin, and when you release the binding cloth, they ooze coral pink fluid that beads on your gloved fingertips. You call for onions, pitch, a strip of linen, classic poultice no longer fashionable among court doctors, but the deacon brings nothing but prayer. The physician sneers that onions reek worse than plague.
Truth, you answer. Yet the onion never killed a man on purpose. You slice, apply, wrap. The Italian thrashes enough to scatter crucifixes. After he quiets, you pack sweet myrtle and salt inside your beak, because the stench of gold-laced rot sticks to the palate like sin. The bishop corners you in an antechamber lined with portraits of martyrs. Candlelight licks flakes of guilt from their halos. He asks in a whisper how long before the lender recovers. You meet his eyes through smoked lenses and answer, if he survives the night, he will ask for interest. The bishop's lips tremble. He gestures to a chest of silver pikeses, communion vessels, and offers 2 in exchange for discretion. This is how charity brands itself as bribery. You accept one, refuse the second, partly for integrity, partly because the monks at St. Gertrude's need chalices to administer comfort to orphans, and a refusal sharpens the bishop's fear more than acquiescence. Walking out, the physician hisses that you've butchered the gentleman. You reply, better butchered by onion than embalmed alive by perfume. He calls after you that the city will soon burn your masks in public square. You hope they start with the ones on the laundry lines. They've seen enough. If you've ever confronted arrogance armed only with blunt truth, type "breathe honesty" in the chat.
Algorithms appreciate candor more than any bishop, trust me. Outside, the sky has hardened into pewter again, but a ribbon of pink sun glints off distant chimneys. Each chimney a coffin turned inside out. On Hill Street, a mob circles a brewer's cart. Word spreads that he waters beer with holy well runoff rumored to cure plague. Customers fight for jugs, fists swinging, mugs shattering. You step between two brawlers, staff raised, and shout, "Water is death, remember?" Silence ripples out, confusion following shame. But greed darts back. Someone lurches, tries to filch a barrel, tips it, liquid sloshes, releases odor of rot. Not holy water, channel runoff, oily with tallow scraps. The crowd scatters, cursing. You help the brewer right the cart. His hands shake like leaves still clinging to winter branches. He thanks you with a small cask sealed in wax. Real ale, he swears. You pocket it for barter. Honesty has price tags. At midday, you reach the derelict pigeon house behind the tanner's yard. A rumor claims pigeons carry healing spirits. Desperate families leave cages of them for you to bless. But pigeons love grain more than miracles. Droppings layer rafters like gray snow. One bird flutters down, lands on your shoulder, pecks your beak tip as if curious what seed hides inside. You lift it gently, feel its heart racing madness beneath feathers. A louse scurries across its eye. You pluck the louse, crush it between gloves, and whisper, "Sorry, friend, no spirits here." You release the pigeon into ash-laden wind. It circles once, twice, then wheels off toward the harbor where gulls outnumber sails. The louse smear on your glove makes a dark comma. You promise to burn the glove tonight. Give a nod in the comments if you've ever freed something small just so the day would hold one kind act amid cruelty. Late afternoon, hospital ward. St. Catherine's cloister smells of spilled mead and sweat. The wardswoman has resorted to dousing floors with strong ale because vinegar barrels ran dry. Cots line both walls, and each patient wears a damp rag over face, poor man's mask. The sisters taught them to inhale through cloth steeped in thyme, but time has wilted. They reuse rags until they smell of doubt. You pause at cot 24. Remember Mariette? The ribbon maker's daughter? Fever burned the color from her cheeks, leaving cheeks like wax. Yet she still hums the fairground ditty in faint gasps. Her mother died 2 dawns ago. The brother fled after coughing blood. Mariette doesn't ask where they've gone. Perhaps she knows and hums for them. You change her bandage, slip a sprig of the bishop's rosewater cloth near her pillow. She smiles weakly. You record on your tablet. Ribbon girl, pulse weak but steady, eyes bright, one ember of hope dusted in ash. You glance down corridor. Novices chant Salve Regina out of tune, their voices cracking adolescence. They tried on spare plague masks for fun last week, giggled, then wept when the beaks smelled of sweat. Now they pray in linen veils, innocence frayed but standing. Dusk settles like bruised silk. Time to collect masks from the alley, burn them. You strike a flint to kindling. Flames crawl up leather, warping beaks into yawns. A gust sweeps sparks skyward. For an instant, they mimic fireflies, last summer's memory flickering out. The smell of burning leather merges with herb residue, acrid yet oddly sweet, like grief sweetened by relief. You watch until nothing remains but curled brass eye rims and blackened straps. The alley finally looks less haunted, though still empty. From shadows, a girl steps forward, hooded, carrying her own crude beak mask sewn from linen, stuffed with lavender fluff. She asks if you're the doctor who spared orphans. You nod. She unveils pustules at her neck, begs for lancing. You kneel by leftover embers for light, sterilize blade in flame, slice swiftly. She doesn't cry, only grips your sleeve. You pack wound with mint leaves she brought herself, resourceful. You tell her to return tomorrow for vinegar wrap. She slips coins, 4 half pennies, into your palm. Your first thought, buy more mint. Comment Ember if you feel the heat of that alley fire, or the courage of a girl trusting a masked stranger. Night patrol rings curfew bell, 3 tolls. Torches flicker along ramparts. You head for loft, but clamor rises by the fountain. Townsfolk chant, "Burn the rats!" Someone brandishes torches, others carry sacks bulging with squealing shapes. They plan a bonfire of live rodents. You step forward, shout that plague fleas flee heat, will leap onto sleeves, into hair. Your voice muffles under mask, only half hear. The mob lights pyre anyway. Screams of rats curl the air. Within seconds, fleas erupt, seeking escape. One woman shrieks, slapping her arms. Another drops torch. Fire licks straw bundles stacked nearby. You move fast, grab water cart, douse flames before straw catches fully. Still, several flee with bites already darkening. Lesson scorches deeper than torch ever will. A brawny cooper, smoke-smudged, confronts you. Your masks hide lies, he claims. If masks worked, plague would be gone. You lift beak, let him smell interior. Herbs, vinegar, sweat. No miracle here, you say. Only reminders. He snorts, but his rage deflates. Raw honesty shears fury. If you'd have stepped between mob and burning rats, smash that like. Courage is contagious too. Back at loft, you set Bishop's silver picks on crate. Pry open, fill with camphor chips. Set near window. Let silver sanctify air, or at least glint hope. You unpack the brewer's cask, pour a measure into wooden cup. Taste. Malty, strong, alive. You allow yourself 2 swallows. Third swallow you give to saint statue on shelf, pouring libation at its feet. The wood darkens, drinks. By candle stub you revise tomorrow's route. Add new symbol to legend. Triangle means house of fear turned violent. More triangles each day. You sharpen quill, dip in ink, but the nib trembles. Hand cramps. You set quill aside, flex fingers, breathe herbs. Candle crackles like tiny bones. You write anyway. The rooster never crows. No creature sane or feathered welcomes dawn when the air tastes of ash and the churchyard groans louder than the bells. You rouse instead to the clatter of shovels hurled against gateposts, grave diggers' protest ringing off stone like hail. They're arrayed outside the magistrate's hall. 30 men in wool caps stiff with frost, faces sooty, fingers splintered in rags. Overnight, they declared a moratorium on burial until the city doubles their bread allowance and sends armed escorts against corpse thieves. Without them, the death wagons already back up in snaking queues, wheels and hooves painting the mud with arcs that steam like open wounds. You tighten the straps of the beak. Fresh mint, marjoram, and a bold pinch of mustard seed this morning. Anything to cut the cold. And wade into the standoff. Someone heaves a spade. It clangs off a stair and skitters past your boots. You plant your brass-clawed staff, raise your voice through the leather funnel. Hold, friends. Refuse the earth, and the earth will refuse you back. A few laugh, hoarse, mirthless, but you've bought a breath of attention. You step onto an upturned barrel, survey their blistered hands, their hollow eyes. Then you speak of simple math. Every day of strike, carts accumulate. Every cart denies them wages later. Every body left to rot spawns more plague, meaning more bodies, far beyond the council's coffers or any bread ration. They know this, but rage is a furnace that likes to be fed. So you pivot to story. How last night a girl with lavender mask survived because workers like them kept trenches open for lime. How her humming stitched a scrap of hope into the ward. Hope, you suggest, is a currency that buys more than bread. If you're listening out there and believe stories change minds faster than edicts, tap the like so the algorithm's own ledger shows it. The foreman, a stump-shouldered veteran named Mickle, steps forward, jaw grizzled, eyes wet from wind or grief. He thrusts a rolled petition, their demands, signatures scarred into wax. You read aloud. Twice daily porridge instead of once, boots from council tannery, a priest assigned to consecrate each mass grave so none fear haunting. Reasonable, you pronounce. You vow to bear the parchment to the bishop yourself today. Mickle nods slow, but the others grumble. Promises are cheap, and coffins cheaper. To tip the scale, you slide the brewer's silver flask from your satchel, still half full of proper ale, and pour a measure into the foreman's wooden mug. For warmth, you say. He drinks, passes it on. Liquid courage travels cup to cup. And soon, spades are hefted not as weapons, but tools once more. Strike suspended. 24 hours grace for you to nudge the bishop's conscience. Comment dig if you think one mug of ale can mend a city's backbone. Comment ditch if you're less convinced. The cathedral square glitters under brittle sun, ice-crusting puddles where holy water overflowed during last week's mass with the dead. Merchants hawk beeswax candles molded in shape of Saint Roch, patron of plague. Buy two, get a third blessed free. You push past and mount the palace steps, petition in hand. Guards in chainmail cross halberds until you announce yourself. Physician in service of His grace. They part. Inside, incense lingers from prime hour liturgy, but underlying stench of boiled vinegar never leaves. Servants scrub floors daily, yet rot hides in mortar. The bishop greets you wearing gloves of white doeskin, fashionable, worthless barrier. You present the gravedigger's demands. He sighs about the treasury, the famine, the difficulty of finding proper priests now that half the clergy cough blood. You remind him of the lender still clinging to life in his guest chamber, whose debt grows interest by the hour. The bishop rubs temples, consents to porridge doubling and new boots, but balks at on-site priests. Their duty is to the living, he insists.
You play your final card, slide the silver pyx across his desk. Its surface mirrors his own face, a face shrunk by sleepless nights. This, you say, tapping the lid, purchased silence once. It can purchase salvation now. Send 2 junior cannons to the trenches. Let them chant while they swing the thurible. The gravediggers will be satisfied, and so might heaven. He studies the vessel, weight of guilt heavier than silver. At last he nods. Wax seals are pressed, agreements drafted. You exit clutching official writ authorizing everything. By midday tomorrow, if plague spares us that long. Out on the quay, fishing boats bob beneath sagging nets. Fishmongers abandon stalls after rumors the sea turned pestilent. Rats race the rigging instead. You've come to find Joel, the tar maker, rumored to brew pitch salve that seals Fleabright's shot. His shack reeks of pine resin and liquor. Joel's beard is a forest of tanglewood, but his mind keener than surgeons. He shows you a crock of tar infused with rosemary oil. Dab it on raw ankles, fleas despise it. You barter half the brewer's ale and the pewter scallop badge. He scrawls a crude label, skin armor, and hands you 3 pots. You test a dab inside your glove, sticky warmth, scent of distant hills. A gaggle of urchins trail you back, noses wrinkled at the beak, but eyes bright for news. They plead for potions, for charms. You kneel, smear tar circles on their wrists like bracelets, telling them it's warrior paint. They giggle, salute with twig swords. One boy asks if plague eats children first or last. You answer honestly, neither. Plague is blind. Courage makes us visible to one another, not to it. He ponders, nods. They disperse, wrists shining resin. If you ever wore a pretend shield just to face real terror, mark the comments with tar band. Twilight again. Time to revisit Mariette. The ward throbs with new moans. Straw supply almost gone. You discover her bed empty. For heartbeat, you dread the chalk mark at door. But nurse explains, she was transferred to convalescent chapel after fever broke. You hurry there, small apps with stained glass lozenges now serving a step-down ward. And there she sits, plaiting ribbons of gauze into a chain, cheeks flushed with life. When she sees your mask, she lights like sunrise, presses the ribbon garland into your gloved palm. To wrap your herbs, she whispers. You feel something like tears fog lenses. You promise to bring her an orange once trade routes reopen, extravagant fantasy that makes her smile wider. Night deepens, a cold so sharp it chisels thoughts. You trudge toward the eastern trench where lime supplies dwindle. Candle lanterns bob ahead, gravediggers working by moon. Among them, the 2 young cannons chanting psalms between shovel strokes. The foreman spots you, raises thumb, deal honored. You help sling bodies, stiff, frozen, lighter than you expect, into the pit. Each thud drums your spine. When carts empty, you sprinkle last of the quicklime, but clouds barely dust topmost corpse. Need more by dawn, or contagion will flower. You volunteer to lead a wagon to the quarry at Riverbend. Mickle hitches swayback mare. You set off under constellations. Hoarfrost jewels every weed. Wheels crunch like bones. Halfway, moans drift from roadside chapel, the leper hospice.
You should not deviate. Lime is life for hundreds. Yet moans hook conscience. You steer nearer. Find two sisters pinned beneath collapsed roof beam. Stones fell during quake tremor earlier. One sister's leg snapped, bone glinting. The other shields her with habit sleeves torn. You heave beam aside, splint leg with wagon staves. Load both atop lime sacks. Detour costs an hour, but hour well spent. Compassion writes its own ledgers. If you've ever rerouted your quest to rescue Surprise Sorrow, post Detour below. By Riverbend, the quarry stands black as a tooth gap. Laborers shovel powder into burlap. They work by bonfire, the color of brass coins. Sparks ride gusts like fleeing souls. You trade tar pot for double ration. Cart brims white. Return journey eerier. Fog blooms from river, cloaking world. Mare snorts at shapes unseen. Suddenly, torchlight bursts ahead. Bandits preying on supply wagons. Three figures in rags, faces swaddled like bandages, demand you halt. You raise staff, declare you carry holy cargo that curses thieves with boils. They hesitate, but leader lunges. You sidestep, swing clawed end. It catches his shoulder, ripping cloth. He yelps, retreats. You whip reins, mare bolts into fog. Behind, curses fade. You don't slow until city wall torches appear. A trench by dawn, lime flurries down like first snowfall. Cannons chant louder, voice cracking but steady. Work concludes as sun rims roofs. You slump against spade handle, muscles shards of ice. Mickle presses a loaf hot from army kitchens into your hand, payment of sorts already enacted. You tear off crust, steam ghosts away into dawn. Back at loft, you set Mariette's ribbon chain on the table, uncoil it around the tar pots like ramparts. You exhale into mask. Herbs now smell of mustard and pine, bracing, almost joyous. For one shivering moment, you allow yourself to believe the pendulum might be swinging away from despair. But parchment list lengthens still, and bells will toll again. Tomorrow we follow the bishop to the trench for penance. We'll confront the powder-masked bandits at their lair, and perhaps, just perhaps, witness the city's first rat-free dawn. The sky is still the color of pewter, but the eastern rim has begun to blush, a pale, reluctant rose, when the pounding on your loft door rattles its hinges. You have barely peeled off the ice-stiff straps of yesterday's beak, yet the bishop's footman is already outside on the stair, cloak whipped sideways by the wind. He thrusts a parchment at you, a summons bearing the bishop's new wax seal, a shovel crossed with a thurible, the emblem he adopted overnight after signing the gravedigger's accord. Below the seal, an hour is scrawled, terse, the third bell of the morning. The bishop, it declares, will descend into the trench himself to appease both heaven and those who labor in its shadow. You glance past the footman toward the river road. Stillness there is fragile as spun glass. One wrong breath could shatter it. You've already promised half the city you would be everywhere at once today. Bandit trail at dawn, lime ration audit at noon, convalescent chapel by dusk. Yet the bishop's vanity march is now top priority. Power trumps triage. So you nod, tuck the parchment beneath your wool cloak,
and tell the footman to relay that you will arrive ahead of his master, staff in hand. Before you leave, you thread Mariette's ribbon garland through the empty eye rims of yesterday's burned masks, then drape the garland over the windowsill where the wind can unravel its knots. You want her hope to travel on the same current that once carried plague fleas into every shutter crack. Let the air remember something sweeter. Out in the alley, the world crunches. Ice sheaths each cobble and glitters in the first angled spear of daylight. You tug the new mask on. Today's stuffing is cedar shavings soaked overnight in sour wine, plus a fragment of orris root for steadiness. It swells in your nostrils like the ghost of violets. The street lamps, still burning, leave twin after-images in your eyes. When you blink, they look like halos following you down the hill. Halfway to the trench, you feel, rather than hear, movement at the edge of vision. 3 silhouettes peeling out of a doorway, shadows that move faster than drunks and quieter than guards. Bandits, perhaps the same who tried to seize your lime wagon. You quicken your stride, but they match it. One whistling a tune you last heard sung by apprentices rolling barrels at the quay. Jaunty, lewd, cruelly cheerful. You pivot into a narrow side passage, back pressed to stone, staff angled across chest. The figures halt at the entrance, and in the wan light you see they are adolescents, 2 boys and a girl. Faces bandaged not by plague, but by soot and cloth for anonymity. Their leader steps forward, palms up. "Not thieves," he says. "Pilgrims of night." His voice cracks on the final word. Puberty undermines menace. He explains they are the orphaned lantern bearers, out of work since curfew shortened street patrols. They heard of your stand in the alley, your promise to burn the rats, your tar warrior paint. They want tasks, anything, to trade for food. You study their gaunt cheeks, the frost blooming on their eyelashes. You tell them to fetch clean straw from the hay merchant's loft, to line the trench path where the bishop's boots will tread. Straw means traction. Traction means no broken hip, and a bishop unbroken is a bishop obliged. They nod, dart off sideways like birds released. If you've ever been saved by the unlikeliest volunteers, hammer that like so the tale travels farther than fear. By the time you reach Potter's Field, the lime pit steams gently, breathing like a great white beast. Gravediggers lean on shovels, waiting. You step down wooden steps slick with hoarfrost, test each rung. At the bottom, trench walls rise in chalky cliffs, and frozen cadavers layered in lime stare upward with pearl-filmed eyes. The 2 junior cannons stand at the far end, swinging thuribles, beating a metronome of clinks. You find Mickle, hand him the bishop's writ, sealed midnight. He spits in his palm, presses it to the parchment, then bellows to his men, "Boots tonight, porridge twice." A low cheer rumbles. Minutes later, a horse snorts on the ridge. The bishop appears, robed in penitential ash gray, mitre removed, hair uncovered. He descends, flanked by deacons carrying buckets of incense and handfuls of crocuses, those last few flowers coaxed from greenhouse soil. His white gloves are gone, bare hands grip the rail. Watching him slip on a rung, you step up, offer the crook of your arm. He accepts with a faint wince. Together, you reach trench bottom. Silence holds. Then the bishop kneels, actually kneels, in lime-clotted mud. Mickle approaches, shovels a single scoop of lime, hands it to the bishop. The bishop sprinkles it across a narrow gap where a small body lies. A boy, maybe 7, hair still blonde under frost. The bishop whispers something, prayer or apology, and turns to you. "Father, continue," he says. You raise your staff, tap the trench wall thrice, a signal for shovels. Men move in rhythm, lime fountains upward, white snow on gray corpses. The bishop remains kneeling until lime dust coats his cassock like chalk. When he rises, tears have carved twin runnels down his cheeks, etching clean lines in the powder. He looks suddenly older, or perhaps exactly his age. If that image carves your heart the way lime carved those cheeks, type runnel below. The algorithm may not understand grief, but it does count repeated awe. The ceremony ends, yet the bishop lingers at trench rim where straw scatterlings cushion his steps. He clasps your shoulder. "You were right," he murmurs. "The earth refuses no one who shows mercy first." He presses a slender vial into your palm, dark liquid, cork-sealed with red wax. "Syrup of poppies and clove," he explains, "for those in pain. There is not enough for the ward, but perhaps for the ribbon girl and for you when sleep flees." You pocket it, unsure whether to thank him or warn him mercy is addictive. Instead, you nod, then escort him to his coach. Lantern bearers, the 3 urchins, kneel as he passes. He drops coins in their pockets without noticing. They gape, then salute you with straw-dusted fists. Just before departing, the bishop calls through the window, "Bring me tomorrow's ledger yourself." You half bow, the most you can manage with lungs aching. The sun climbs noonward. You march for the bandit lair, a cluster of abandoned soap-maker sheds by River Marsh. You bring tar salve, the bishop's servant as witness, and your staff newly wrapped in Mariette's ribbon, so even violence feels tethered to hope. You find the shed door ajar, smoke curling from its gap. Inside, 7 figures crouch round brazier, 3 from last night plus 4 more, all skeletal, eyes jittering. Their leader's arm is sealed in sling of filthy linen where your staff struck him. He tries to lurch upright, fails. You hush them, set staff aside, open tar pot. You smear his wound, the resin crackling. He hisses, but stills. "No healer treats a thief," he rasps. "Then you misjudged my title," you reply. Negotiations ensue. You promise no city watch if they escort lime wagons henceforth, defending them from rival raiders. City rewards them with bread and clemency. Desperation outweighs pride. They agree. You shake resin-sticky hands to seal the pact. Afternoon bleeds to dusk. At Convalescent Chapel, Mariette meets you with a shy grin. You present the vial of poppy clove syrup. She dips a ribbon tip into it, hums approval. Sweetness, finally. You fetch oranges? Not yet. But you hand her a single primrose from Bishop's bouquet, a symbol spring still plans to visit. She tucks it behind ear, radiant. When you turn, the chapel is humming. Survivors practicing breathing exercises the novices taught, inhaling through pursed lips so lungs strengthen. The sound resembles wind in reeds, a fragile woodwind orchestra. Your chest tightens, not with plague, but hope again. If you're inhaling along,
Post wind, so we can measure this invisible choir.
Night. Final patrol. City holds its breath. Rats are scarce tonight. Whether miracle, frost, or diminishing corpses, you can't know. You arrive at the alley of burnt masks. New lines strung with fresh leather beaks you commissioned from tanners, dyed crimson so no one mistakes them for yesterday's failures. You mount a lantern, let its glow illuminate the rows. Passers-by pause. Some gasp, some cross themselves, yet none jeer. You pin a placard. For those who fight fever with breath, take one. Within minutes, a midwife, a laundress, and the physician with ambergris nostrils each claim a mask. The physician hesitates longest before nodding thanks. Progress measured in masks and grudges surrendered. If second chances inspire you, write crimson below. You climb the loft stairs long past midnight. Inside, the air is almost warm. The silver picks and cedar mask stuffing have sweetened it. You hang ribbon-wrapped staff on peg, unlace boots stiff with lime. Sitting at rough-hewn desk, you open ledger to final page labeled simply 7th Vigil. You document Bishop's penance, gravedigger accord fulfilled, bandit escort treaty, reduced rat sightings. Then one last entry. Blood. Mariette sang entire verse without coughing. You underline twice, ink blotting like a tear. You close the book. Outside the window, the sky bruises purple where stars retreat. A hush you've never heard during plague years settles. No cartwheels, no distant wails. Just a single cock crow from outskirts. Dawn. You open shutters. Frost crystals on rooftops shimmer pink in newborn light. Smoke rises from chimneys, but gently. Breakfast fires, not funeral pyres. For first time in months, you smell baking bread, not burning tallow. You inhale, cedar and dawn mingling, then remove the beak. Cold air slaps your unfiltered nostrils, sharp, honest, alive. Below, children carrying empty pails race toward the public well. Their laughter rings like dropped marbles on marble floors. You rest mask on sill. Sun catches its brass eye rims and sets them aflame. Reflection flashes across alley onto opposing wall where rats once crawled. Today, only light scurries. Here, dear listener, our vigil ends. If this journey through soot and silver, lime and ribbon breathed courage into your own long night, subscribe so we can roam new epochs side by side. Ring the bell so dawn finds us together again. And in the comments, write I breathe. 2 words, simple as first light, fierce as lungs that outlasted plague. Algorithms read them as engagement. I read them as proof hope survived. Close your eyes now. Let cedar and clove cradle your dreams. The 7th bell will toll soon. But when you wake, remember, the mask is only leather. The healer is you.